The roar of the engines was supposed to be comforting. For men like Ethan Caro, power and control were everything. The low hum of his private jet was the sound of his dominance, of decisions made above the clouds. He glanced at his reflection in the darkened glass, seeing not a man, but an empire cold, polished, and untouchable. He checked his watch, gold glinting in the cabin light. Another meeting, another deal, another life conquered. Somewhere below, the world struggled, while he soared above it all. But in a single instant, that illusion shattered. A deafening boom tore through the silence. The jet jolted violently. Ethan's glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor as alarm screamed. The pilot's voice came through, panicked something about engine failure, rapid descent, mayday. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. The man who'd built towers was falling from the sky. Through the chaos, he remembered one face, a face he had buried in memory and regret. Lena Ward. Years ago, Lena had been his partner, both in business and in love. They had built something beautiful, a dream they shared when they were young, before power consumed him. But when greed called, Ethan had answered. He'd betrayed her trust, taken what was hers, and left her broken. She had disappeared from his world without a word. Now, as the plane spiraled downward through clouds, her name whispered through his mind like a prayer. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was still. His body ached. Smoke hung in the air. The wreckage of the jet lay scattered across a forest clearing, twisted metal glowing faintly in the rain. He tried to move, his vision blurred, blood trickling down his temple. The world felt far away until a voice cut through the haze. "Don't move." He blinked. Out of the fog, a figure emerged, drenched, her clothes muddy, hair tied back. Her eyes widened as they met his. It couldn't be real. "Lena?" he rasped, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're lucky I still know how to save people, Ethan." She knelt beside him, professional and detached, checking his pulse, the wound on his head. Her movements were quick, practiced, almost mechanical, but he could feel the tremor in her hands. I thought you were gone," he whispered. "I was," she said flatly, "until your plane dropped into my world." Rain fell harder. She dragged him away from the wreckage, her boots sinking into the mud, her breath sharp with effort. Ethan tried to speak, to apologize, but the words tangled in his throat. When they finally reached the safety of a nearby cabin, small, wooden, and worn, Lena laid him on a couch and stoked the fire. The flames flickered across her face, softening the hardness he remembered. She poured water into a glass, handed it to him without a word, and sat on the opposite side of the room. "Why did you save me?" he asked quietly. She looked into the fire. "Because no one deserves to die alone, not even you." The words struck him deeper than the crash. Ethan glanced around the cabin, books lined the shelves, a blanket draped over an old armchair, a quiet life built from nothing. "You live here?" Lena nodded. "After you took everything, I started over, away from the noise, away from people like you." He swallowed hard. "Lena, Don't," she cut in sharply. "You don't get to explain. You had your chance years ago." Silence settled between them, thick and uneasy. Outside, thunder rolled over the forest. Inside, two ghosts sat facing the fire, their past flickering in the light between them. For the first time in years, Ethan Caro had nothing to say. But that night, as Lena bandaged his wounds, something shifted. The way she avoided his eyes wasn't just anger, it was pain. And beneath her calm, he saw the same fire he'd once fallen in love with. When she turned to leave the room, he murmured, "I don't deserve your kindness." She stopped in the doorway, shoulders tense. "No, you don't. But life doesn't always give us what we deserve." He watched her go, realizing how much he'd lost, not just her trust, but the version of himself that had once believed love mattered more than power. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He listened to the rain, to the quiet creak of the cabin, to the sound of Lena moving softly in the next room. He thought about the empire waiting for him, the boardrooms, the headlines, the hollow applause. None of it meant anything compared to this, a woman who once loved him, now saving his life out of sheer humanity. By morning, the storm had cleared. Lena stood outside, gathering wood, her breath visible in the cold air. Ethan limped to the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You could have left me," he said. She didn't look up. "I thought about it." He smiled faintly. "I'm glad you didn't." She shot him a glance, weary, guarded. "Don't read too much into it, Ethan. I helped you because that's who I am, not because you deserve it." He nodded, the weight of guilt pressing heavier on his chest. "Still, thank you." For a moment, her expression softened, just a flicker of warmth before she turned away again. He knew then that redemption wasn't something you asked for. It was something you earned, one small act at a time. And for the first time, Ethan Caro wanted to be worthy of the life she'd just saved. Days passed. The wreckage had been located, and rescue teams would arrive soon, but something in Ethan had already shifted. For years, he had commanded empires and forgotten faces. Now, trapped in a small cabin with the one woman he'd wronged most, he was forced to remember what it meant to be human. Lena remained distant. She spoke only when necessary, her tone calm but clipped. Yet beneath the surface, Ethan sensed something breaking. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the slow cracking of old walls. One evening, as the fire crackled between them, Ethan finally spoke. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Lena, and I threw it all away." She didn't move, didn't even look up. "I was blinded by success," he continued softly. "But I see now. The higher I climbed, the lonelier it became. I thought I was winning, but I was losing everything that mattered." Lena's hands tightened around the mug in her lap. "You didn't just lose me, Ethan. You destroyed the woman who believed in you. I spent years picking up the pieces of someone you left behind." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, Ethan saw tears glisten in her eyes. "I know," he whispered. "And I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry people say to feel better, the kind that comes when it's too late." Silence lingered. Then, slowly, she stood and walked to the door. "Maybe it's not too late," she said quietly. "But that's for you to prove, not with words, Ethan, with the man you choose to be when you walk out of this place." The next morning, the distant rumble of helicopters echoed through the valley. Rescuers were coming. Ethan turned to Lena, unsure what to say. "Will I see you again?" he asked. She smiled faintly, not with warmth, but with peace. "Maybe, if you become someone worth seeing." He nodded, the truth hitting harder than any wreckage ever could. "I'll try," he said. As the rescuers carried him away, Ethan looked back one last time. Lena stood in the clearing, hair blowing in the wind, framed by sunlight breaking through the clouds, a symbol of everything pure he'd once betrayed. Months later, when Ethan returned to the city, things were different. He sold his company, gave away much of his wealth, and started a foundation, one that helped rebuild lives instead of breaking them. He named it Ward's Promise. And somewhere deep in the mountains, Lena received a simple letter. "I kept my word. Thank you for saving more than just my life. Ethan." She folded the letter slowly, eyes softening. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to smile not for him, but for the closure that finally set her free. Outside, the same sky stretched wide and endless, not a symbol of distance anymore, but of healing. Because sometimes, the people we betray are the ones who remind us what redemption truly costs.